Joining us now is incredible comics creator on the rise, Scott Brian Woods. Woo! How's it going, Scott?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Really excited to be talking to you today. So we recently became aware of your work through your self-published ash cans like the fantasy epic No RASK for the Wicked and the sci-fi adventure Daring the Sun. And like our astonishment with your work was recently taken to the next level in our own house by seeing the awesome pages you're doing for our dad's story Demons in his Laser Brain Comics Halloween special. You also have a pretty big title from Comics House coming up, so we're just super excited to be talking to you today.
Thanks for having me.
When you were a kid, what were some of the comics, movies, cartoons, and other pop culture that inspired your work today?
The classics. Obviously, He-Man. So that's one. Spider-Man, Conan the Barbarian. That was the first comic that I remember reading. My brother was reading the old black and white Savage Sword of Conan. My grandfather, he decided I needed to learn how to read, so he was buying me the smaller comics, like the regular size comics. So that's how I started to read, and that totally jump-started things for me. He always had a book, so I think he took notice that his grandson's not reading. So he's like, I'll jumpstart it, and it totally worked because I read all the time now, and yeah, I thank him for that for sure. My mother was a painter, so there was always art around. My brother could draw. I was always drawing and start making your own comics. I was probably doing that at age 8, 9.
So last Free Comic Book Day, Comics House put out a preview of The Equilibrium, your new series that will star Captain Canuck, Daredevil, Freelance, and more awesome Canadian superheroes drawn by you. So how'd this project come about?
So I'm up here in Canada, and I'd go to Toronto for Fan Expo, which is probably our biggest convention. Now, editors would come up and they do interviews and stuff like that. And so I went in for like a DC portfolio review just to show them my stuff. I posted a picture on Instagram that I had done an interview, and that was it. And then Keith Morris, as the editor, he came across it and just said, "Have you worked for DC at all? Have you gotten any work from them?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Would you like to draw 5 issues of Equilibrium?" And then I was like, yes, I would. Issue 1 came out for the Free Comic Book Day, like you said. And it was just sort of establishing that there's a Claw, the major villain, really old throwback villain to, gosh, I want to say like 40s. He wants to take over the world, dominate, that sort of thing. And it's just sort of his story about how he's going about doing that. And then it's the Equilibrium team is like it's Captain Canuck, Phantoma, Captain Battle, Monsieur Midnight, Zongar, and Abarax. All these characters are a team, and they are going to join forces to combat it. The second issue is drawn. Third issue is drawn. Fourth issue, I've finished the thumbnails. I don't really do pencils. I do like really, really rough thumbnails, and then because I do digital, so then I just draw right over those, and I usually adjust things on the fly.
So also, you just put out the second issue of your awesome sci-fi ashcan series, Daring the Sun. The story follows a Flash Gordon-like astronaut who crashes on like a Dune-esque, like Arrakis-type planet full of danger, adventure, and sandworms. So the art is absolutely amazing in this. So like what has your creative process been like making these comics?
Well, those ones, that character's been around in my head since 2011, I think. Like I've been drawing him in one form or another.
Oh, wow.
And I've not committed to drawing it out. Like I had lots of drawings of it. I had some pages. I would do like a sequence of like, where he would meet the main character or second character, Vala. So I would just draw as like pages. I wouldn't even have any story written. I would just draw a sequence of like, how would these two meet? And then I would then go back and sort of like add the words in, or as I'm drawing it, I'm like, oh, this would be cool for them to say this or do that. And so I would do a series of those, and I just have like some pages here, some pages there. And then eventually I did the RASK book first because I just needed to start doing something. I had to put the pages together, and I just started amalgamating it. And it was almost like a director, because I had all these scenes that I had drawn, and I started to place them all together. And then I'd read, and then at some point I was like, these don't match, so I'm going to redraw this sequence, or this page is gone because it doesn't make sense in here. So then I filled in some spots, and so that jump started it. So I got issue 1 done, and then I kind of did half of that with issue 2, and then the rest of that was all just new drawn pages. And so issue 3 is going to be just all redrawn.
So are you like switching between the two series, No RASK for the Wicked and Daring the Sun? Like, are you taking turns with them? Or are you kind of focusing on one currently and working on the other later?
I'm kind of working on all 3 at the same time. So I'm working on the Equilibrium stuff. I'm working on Daring, and then I'm also working on RASK when I when I can. Like the RASK book is D&D based. It's based on a campaign that my friends and I were playing. I really like the character, and so sort of after a game of D&D, I'll probably come home and I'll actually end up drawing a little bit of that. And then I'll go on to the next one. Or if I need to get pages done for Equilibrium, I might sort of just like, okay, do 2 pages of this, move on, do a page of my own, do page, something like that. So it's just sort of like, the nice thing about self-publishing is there's no one telling you it has to be out by this certain time. So you can put as much time into something as it requires.
Right.
And then I think it just adds to the quality of it.
And I mean, you mentioned No RASK for the Wicked being an adaptation of your D&D campaigns. So it follows the adventures of a human rogue named Rask and a dwarf wizard named Broder. And these comics are great. We really love them. The action is very visually fluent, and it's amazing how you're able to nail the medieval English like that. So like, I wanted to ask, like, you said like how you'll adapt like D&D stories into the comic. So how does that process go? Like how 1-to-1 is it?
The campaign Ravenloft is an old campaign. It's been out for a long time, vampire based stuff. So we're playing the newer version of that for 5th edition. And so the character that I have in that is Rask, and he's a thief. And my friend's character is Brotor, and he's a wizard, a dwarf wizard. We're just, out just basically playing and having fun. There's other characters in it too that May had accidentally died because I played my character very selfishly and did not want to fight werewolves because I knew he was not going to survive. So I kind of hid, and then my buddy, his wizard, hid, and we kind of were like, "Oh, they'll figure it out. They'll fix it. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. They'll be fine." And then they weren't fine. In the issue of Rask, they're pulling a cart. There's bodies in the back of the cart, and those are those characters that didn't make it. So what happened to start that whole character was there's a scene in the book, in the first book, where Rask is trying to negotiate with some highwaymen, thieves, and he gets shot. And that happened in our game. And so I took that scene and I went home and I drew it, and I was like, well, this is pretty fun. I like this character. You build a backstory when you're making a D&D character, so you already put all this time into it. And so I was like, I'm just going to keep drawing more pages. So I kept drawing more pages, and then I was like, I like where this is going. And then I took a campaign that I had made for my friends, where I was the DM, and there was a ghost in it haunting the character, and there were witches. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to combine these things. So I kind of took parts of one campaign, parts of something that I've already created and have lots of backstory for. So I just sort of merged the two. And so now it's not really necessarily following our ongoing campaign, but it's just been, inspired by, and now it's kind of taking off in its own direction.
That's awesome.
That's really a great idea. Because I mean, it's not necessarily like developing an idea from scratch. It's like almost sort of like what you said for Daring the Sun. It's like you had like a bunch of different pages ready to go, and then you just put them all together into a comic. And then it's almost similar with this, because you had all these different campaigns, all these different stories together, and just merge them into one thing. So that's something I think is really cool and really inspiring about your work.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it is kind of cool how like one D&D campaign might not be enough for a whole comic. So that's cool that you're piecing together different parts of different campaigns you've done.
Yeah, and then like in ongoing, if something happens in a game, like everybody who plays D&D, they always want to talk about it. They always want to, like, this thing happened in a game, but now you can actually take that little nugget and then you can, like, build up around it, because some crazy things happen that nobody could think of. Your imagination is just like, and everybody's, everybody's imagination is going to add to it, so that can really create opportunities for you to like make different stories that branch off from. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like just it's almost like cheat sheets. Like you know what I mean, like you have all these little extra ideas that are just sitting there, and you're like, they're not throwaways. You just take them like, hey, you guys going to use that? I'll use that. And then you start grabbing all these things, and then you can put them together.
Yeah, and also, apart from these comics, as we mentioned earlier, in our dad's upcoming Laser Brain Comics Halloween special featuring 8 spooky short stories, you did the art on the story titled Demons, featuring 2 guys in a bar and a portal to hell. We would say more about this, but we were given strict permission not to ruin the punchline of the story. But it was just really awesome to see the pages coming in from this. And our dad says he just gave you a loose script and you just really ran with it. So how did you find the writer to artist process on this compared to past ones? Do you always like working from a loose script, or do you prefer other kinds of processes?
Yeah, for the most part, I found it was just spoke with your dad about it, and it was just a back and forth with emails, and he was like, I'm thinking, EC Comics, it's in a bar, and I was like, great. We talked a little bit about what kind of characters would be in there, and then he just said, he basically just let me go, and so as I drew the pages, and I told him I would give him some rough outlines. I probably gave him more tighter roughs than I would normally. Like, I didn't want it to be so loose that he'd be like, whoa, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this. But like, working with the guys from Comic House, like, I showed them tight drawings of what a character would look like. I said, I don't know if I'm the right guy for you, so here's what a Captain Canuck would look like. And I sent them a drawing, like, refined. And then I said, now I'm going to give you really, really loose thumbs for the pages, but trust me, they'll be more detailed. But with your dad, I just wanted to make sure that, right off the bat, and it is a 3-page story, so I felt like I had the time that I could put a little bit more into it. And I think it worked out. It was written well. Like, it was easy. Like, as what I was reading, I was totally picturing, and that's what you see in the pages. So it was really fun to do. It was awesome, really.
Yeah, that's great. And like, I remember it was like when you first sent over the rough outlines, it was like, we're like, geez, these are rough outlines. It's really freaking good, because there's still a lot of detail and a lot of depth in there. And you do a lot of very cool things with the ink. So it's definitely a great story. I think it's really going to stand out, and I'm excited for people to see it.
And like, after like the final version of it was so awesome. Like, you put in so many cool little visual plot points and stuff that our dad was so excited about, because they weren't even in the script, and you just put all this stuff in there that really just made the story come to life.
Because where it takes place, that becomes like a character in itself, right? So the background scene and stuff like that is like, to establish that, it just helps. Like any movie or something like that, like like Yellowstone. I don't know if you guys watch Yellowstone, but like, it's the Yellowstone's background is another character in itself of the show, kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you prefer working with this loose script to the thumbnails to the final thing method, or do you prefer like a full script thing more?
I don't know. I don't mind, like, with Equilibrium, it's a full script. There's a description and everything like that. And it's nice to have that, for sure. I kind of, I don't know. It all depends on, I guess, what you're working on. It's nice to have something that's so written out that you can't not miss. You know what I mean? If it's too loose, the interpretation might be so far from what the writer thinks to what you're doing, and then they might not like it, kind of thing. But I don't mind too much detail. Like in a script, because I can always leave something out and then justify it by saying, well, there was way too many things to be drawn in here. Like, Equilibrium's tough because there's so many characters in it. I think the first page I did, there's just so many characters that it was a lot.
Wow, that looks really cool.
So the pages, I think it's up on the site too. If you went to, I think it's levgleason.com.
So what's next for Scott Brian Woods, and where can we support you?
And my website is scottbrianwoods.com. I've got my books up there. You can get digital versions of the 2 issues of RASK that are out and the 2 issues of Daring the Sun. And then I've also got a kids book that I wrote for my kids during the pandemic that is just about them having to use their imagination, and because everybody was we couldn't go out and do anything, so it's just about them just using their imagination in the house. Like when you're flipping through it, it's one page will be them in the living room, and then it says, "Let's play The Floor is Lava." Turn the page, they're in the exact same position, but now the floor is lava, and it's their imagination. So it's for early readers. But that's up there on the site too. Instagram is just at scottbrianwoods.com or at scottbrianwoods.
Awesome.
Excellent. So thank you so much for doing this interview. It was really great talking to you, but good luck with all your future projects, and hope you have a fantastic week.
All right. Thanks very much, guys. This was fun. Take care.